Now, Donald Trump is about to make history by becoming the first former U.S. president to face criminal charges. He's expected to leave his New York residence shortly for the court building and office of Manhattan's district attorney. The charges are unclear, but are linked to hush money paid to a porn star who claims she had an affair with Trump. He says the case is politically motivated and is calling on supporters to protest. Kristen Salumi joins us now outside the courthouse in New York. She joins us on the phone. So first of all, tell us what we expect to unfold in court today, Kristen.
I hear that you guys are having problems with the Jazeera signal.
10 minutes or so, we've seen police presence ramp up outside the courthouse. The street has been closed to traffic. More barricades have been put up. Police are being very deliberate in redirecting pedestrians away from the courthouse at this time, not allowing people to stop and take pictures, even though we're seeing a tremendous amount of public interest in what's happening at the courthouse where I'm standing outside. People coming by, coming out of their offices to try to snap a picture, and as well as demonstrators, some of whom have come from other parts of the country to show their support for President Trump. Also, detractors of President Trump we're seeing around here as well. But in terms of what we expect when the president gets here, clearly the massive amounts of news crews who are on the scene are hoping to get a glimpse of the president. We don't know if that will be possible outside due to the security measures. Once he's inside, he will be processed, have his fingerprints taken. He will do some paperwork and then be escorted into a courtroom. We may get a glimpse of him on video in that hallway as he makes his way to the courtroom, but the judge is not allowing any cameras in the court to witness the proceeding, but reporters who waited all night to get in the courtroom will be allowed in to see the proceedings. At that time, the president will be formally charged. We expect or hope to hear the specific charges that will be leveled against him at that time or shortly thereafter. We expect the president to enter a not guilty plea. Of course, these charges are all related to the hush money payment that was made on his behalf in the run-up to the 2016 election, but the specifics of the charges have yet to be revealed. So the whole proceeding, once President Trump is inside, probably will only take an hour or two. But a lot of anticipation. This is just the first step of a legal proceeding. And the entire process could take months, if not a year. But obviously a lot of focus, a lot of attention on the first time former presidents being charged in a courthouse. And after the actual proceeding takes place, we expect President Trump to go back to Florida, and we expect the prosecutor, District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who's overseeing this case, to speak to the media for the first time since the charges against the president were filed. So we are all waiting outside the courthouse on tenterhooks, just waiting for this process to get underway.
And Kristen, you mentioned there this could take months, if not a year or more. And when a final ruling is in is a key question, is it not? Because at the same time, this is not only unusual because he's a former president, he's running again for the White House. And any result from this judicial process could impact that race, right?
Absolutely. President Trump has already declared that he will run again in 2024. And under U.S. law, even if he were convicted of a crime, he could still run for president. The president has attempted to use this turn of events, which would, of course, be seemingly a negative turn of events, being charged for a crime. He's attempted to turn it to his favor, to use it to rally his base. He is declaring it's a witch hunt, that the prosecutor is making these charges against him in order to sway the 2024 election, and He's called on his supporters to rally on his behalf in that. Apparently, he's raised more than $4 million in the last week since the charges came to light, since the news came to light that he was going to be facing these criminal charges. But of course, this isn't the only criminal case or the only investigation facing President Trump. And all of these will play out over the next year in the run-up to that election. So again, you would think that would be a negative thing that would hurt someone running for office, and certainly his detractors, who we've also seen out here demonstrating, would think it should disqualify him from running for president or being president. But for many of his supporters, they're saying this is just more evidence that the cultural and presidential elite, the political elites, are against Trump. So.
And bring it for me?
Yeah, and so, sorry, a lot going on here outside the courtroom, but a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation as we wait to see the next steps play out.
I need to go live.
All right, Kristen Sulemi, thanks for that. Let's go over to Gabriel Elizondo. He's also in Manhattan. He's been keeping an eye on protests. How have they been shaping up?
Yeah, there are protesters, both pro and anti-Trump protesters. They're closer to where Kristen is, on the front of the courthouse, just about a block and a half from where I am at. I've been there all morning, and everything has been pretty peaceful, just a lot of shouting back and forth. The police are keeping all the protesters in one park right across from the front entrance of the courthouse, and they're dividing them with barricades, separating the two groups of protesters so there aren't any problems. Where I'm at now is on the backside of the courthouse, and just to give you an idea, I'm on the opposite end of the court complex from where Kristen is at right now. Why are we here? Because this is where Trump will be brought in through the back entrance of the courthouse. You can see some people here. It's some tourists, some just residents. The sidewalk is open. There's obviously some journalists here, but most of them are at the front of the courthouse. And this is where, once Trump leaves Trump Tower, it's about 6 kilometers drive to this location. And this is where we believe his motorcade will come in, and they will shut down these streets completely, and he'll be brought in on this street behind this police car. It's just 1 second. It's just 1 second. Behind this police car, and then that's where he'll be brought in to a back entrance there. That's why we're here, monitoring that, and as soon as he leaves Trump Tower, this is where he will get in. He will probably not go in the front entrance, where there are hundreds, if not thousands, of more journalists there. So pretty much every entrance to the court is being staked out right now.
All right, and since you've been, Gabriel, watching those protesters, give us an idea of how the idea, if not the image, which will emerge of Donald Trump being charged, being fingerprinted. I know there's been some question of whether he's going to get mugshots or not. How is that playing out in the psyche of Americans?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk to the Trump supporters, I ask them, why are you here? And they say because they feel this is political persecution. Those are what the Trump supporters say, almost echoing exactly what Trump has been saying himself over the last several days. They say they're here to support former President Trump. But this is clearly unprecedented situation. I mean, we've said the word unprecedented so many times over recent days, but just can't be said enough. And there's a lot of sense of almost shock and disbelief by everyone here of what's actually happening. A former president indicted, showing up to surrender, even with anti-Trump protesters, they were almost in shock as well. And an interesting thing is you talk to both sides, and both sides are holding up signs saying,
I'll just jump in, Gabriel. Sorry to interrupt you, but just to let viewers know, we're watching pictures of that motorcade. We understand that is Donald Trump. He's leaving his residence in New York and heading over probably to where you're located, Gabriel, pretty soon. So the heat's coming your way.
Yeah, that's right. It's like I said, it's about 6 kilometers. Let's walk around just a little bit more. It's about 6 kilometers from where Trump Tower is to right where we're at. And you can already see a little bit more of activity as within a minute or two, as soon as Trump gets within about a kilometer or so from here, they're going to definitely close these streets completely to all traffic. They can do that at a moment's notice here. And this is where we expect his motorcade either to come in this direction or the opposite direction and be brought here. It's going to happen all very quickly. The camera shot you're seeing now is the actual entrance where we believe Trump will be brought into. And you won't be able to see him when he gets out of his vehicle because they're bringing him through a back entrance. And this is for security reasons. It's just unprecedented security here, getting a former president to this location where, again, on the other side of the courthouse, you have hundreds, perhaps even now over 1,000 pro-Trump protesters. You have several hundred anti-Trump protesters on the other side of the courthouse. You can see it's much calmer here, and that's probably why they plan to bring Trump in this direction. And you can already see, actually, they're starting to close the streets. As I'm looking up the street here, you see some officers starting to walk down a little bit, starting to get in position down the street here as they're waiting for that motorcade to get here. Again, 6 kilometers. He's got a police escort, of course. You can now see some ambulances and sirens. So within the next few minutes, I would say, they'll totally block this off in preparation for Trump's motorcade. Of course, they're monitoring it. The police are obviously in communication with each other, as well as the Secret Service and FBI, I should say, is involved in security as well. And as soon as he gets within a few blocks, they'll completely block this off just for safety reasons.
Let me just talk a little bit, Gabriel. Do stay with me, but I want to talk a little bit to these pictures, and we just let them breathe for a second to take in the historic nature of this moment. Okay, that's a motorcade bringing a former US president to a court in New York where he will be arraigned, arrested, and criminally charged. That has never happened before in the history of the United States of America to a sitting or former US president. We understand he's just a few kilometers away from that process officially beginning. Gabriel, maybe you can explain to us, we know, of course, what arrest and arraignment might mean in the usual context. What does it mean in terms of how Donald Trump will be treated? Will there be handcuffs, jail cells, mugshots, fingerprinting?
Well, under normal procedures, anyone that is indicted would be brought here and they would be photographed and sometimes handcuffs. That's under normal procedures. But it's important to remember here that while Donald Trump was indicted, he has not been convicted of any crime yet. And that's a big difference. And so when this process we're seeing play out right now, this historic process that we're seeing on live television right now, it's part of the normal process of someone that's been indicted surrendering. So will he be handcuffed? We are told no. That's what we have been told. That is by different sources, that the Secret Service does not want him handcuffed and that there's really no need to handcuff him, we are told. This is not from the district attorney. This is just what we've been hearing from various sources, from various law enforcement agencies. When you handcuff someone, you want to detain them. There's really no reason in this situation to detain somebody as high profile as an ex-president who's turning himself in willingly. That's number one. Will there be a mugshot? Well, that's the photograph. The short answer to that is we, quite frankly, don't know. We've heard that there will be a mugshot. We've also heard that perhaps there will not be a mugshot. We might not know until Donald Trump gets here, gets inside that court building, and it might not be till afterwards that we even know if he had a mugshot. So listen, unprecedented. I can tell you what normally happens in situations like this when someone is indicted and they're brought here to surrender. But again, this is not a normal situation. So while the district attorney says that they are going to treat everyone the same, I can also tell you that there are certain safety, security precautions that can be negotiated here. So the key is going to be, after Donald Trump is fingerprinted and maybe photographed, that process could take as long as an hour. He will be brought to a courtroom within this complex here, and there will be cameras, we're told, in the hallway for a short walk, where they'll be able to photograph Donald Trump as he walks into the courtroom. So listen, it's unprecedented, and there's some things about the next hour to 2 hours or so, we simply might not know what happens until afterwards.
All right, that's an important point. Gabriel, I'm going to thank you. We are going to come back to you later, but now we're going to go back to Kristen Salumi. She's, of course, in front of the court, the opposite side where you've been standing, Gabriel. And Kristen, take us through what we might expect happen. I mean, Donald Trump is known for, shall we say, going off-piste a little bit, going off-script. There are going to be cameras around. There will be, we understand, cameras inside at least the court hallways. What do we expect from Donald Trump?
Well, we know Donald Trump has painted this investigation as a witch hunt. He's accused the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, of attempting to affect the 2024 presidential election. And he has not hesitated to talk about the situation here. So anything is possible when he arrives at the courthouse behind me. It's possible he might try to talk to the media or to supporters who've gathered outside, but the security presence here is so tight. It's so difficult to move around the courthouse at this time. I don't know if you can see the police officers behind me. Just in the last half hour, they have really increased the street. They've stopped allowing cars to go through. They've stopped allowing pedestrians to go through. The media, where I am, we're all stuck in a pen. So exactly what happens, as Gabe was saying, it's really hard to know because this is so unprecedented. And in some ways, it's a routine court proceeding where someone is accused of a crime. You come in, you acknowledge the crime, you do some paperwork, you enter a plea before the judge, and the real investigation and trial happens much later. But of course, this is unprecedented. This is a former president that is coming here to the courthouse to face these charges. What will happen inside after the fingerprints and the paperwork happens and he heads to that courthouse, there will be the actual arraignment. That's where he's presented with the charges and enters a plea. We know he'll say not guilty. Now, another thing, Gabe was talking about a lot of the unknowns here. Another thing that's unknown, in an arraignment, the judge can read the charges out loud, but the defendant typically has the right to waive the reading of the charges and not have them said out loud in the courtroom. So will we hear for the first time in the courtroom those charges? We just don't know. Or will it come out when the paperwork is revealed afterwards? We're expecting to learn this today, but nothing is 100% confirmed. The district attorney, Alvin Bragg, will speak publicly about the case for the first time after all of the proceedings are done. He's called a press conference to address the media at that time, and assumably we will get a lot more information at that point about the specifics. And of course, we know from the witnesses who've been called to speak in the secret grand jury proceedings and from leaks from the courthouse that this does involve the hush money payment that the former president made through his fixer to adult film star. The president has always denied that there was an affair with this film star or knowledge of the payment. The payment itself wouldn't be illegal unless it was combined with covering up other crimes. And that's the details of which we're waiting to hear from the courthouse, from the lawyers. Up until now, Trump's team has said that even he does not know they do not know the exact extent of the charges. So that's just a little bit of the flavor and the expectation and the hype that we're having out here. And I can tell you that all the way down the street, I don't know if there's more security, more police, or more media. There's probably hundreds of news crews out here from not only all around the country, but all over the world, trying to cover this story. So clearly a lot of interest in this case. And as I was saying earlier, even pedestrians, local office workers coming out to see what's happening and what the latest is.
All right, thanks so much, Kristen Salumi. And Kristen and Gabriel, who are with us, and they're watching this very historic moment, as the rest of us are. Let me just explain once again what we're looking at, and that we understand is the motorcade of the former U.S. President Donald Trump making its way from his residence in New York towards that Manhattan court, where for the first time in the U.S.'s history, a former U.S. president will be criminally charged. This is obviously a very historic moment and a very polarizing moment for the United States of America. Well, Amy Koch is a Republican political strategist. She joins me now on Skype from Minneapolis. Amy, I'm sure you're watching these pictures as we all are, and I'm wondering, how do you see this? Is this a moment of triumph for the supremacy of law, for the principle that everyone is equal before the law? No matter how powerful you are, you can be brought to justice? Or is this a case of how politicized the law has become in America?
Right. Well, lest anyone thought that American politics was getting boring, we give you today. And I don't know that it's a triumph. And
all right, I'm very sorry, Amy. I apologize. I have to take us to Gabriel, where we understand that the motorcade is pulling up to where you are, Gabriel.
Here we go. This is Donald Trump. This is Donald Trump's motorcade arriving here at the courthouse. He's in one of these vehicles. I think he was just in that third vehicle there under heavy security. A historic moment. The former president of the United States, Donald Trump, being escorted into the back entrance in a motorcade to the courthouse. The first scene of Donald Trump's motorcade arriving for the ex-president of the United States to surrender to authorities. Did not see him in the vehicles, but that's common because the vehicles have dark windows there. Helicopters overhead buzzing for security, probably media helicopters as well. But we can now report that Donald Trump has arrived at the courthouse here in Lower Manhattan, New York, and he is now in the process of beginning his official surrender. The motorcade went down this street and turned left. Okay. And this is the scene right now behind the courthouse where I'm at. The entire process now moves forward. We've been talking about it for several days now of what will happen, what could happen. Now we are reaching the stage of what is happening. And that is Trump going through the process of someone that has been indicted for criminal charges arriving at the courthouse to turn himself in. Of course, this is a normal process under criminal indictments, but this is not a normal scene because this is not a normal situation, of course. Historic. Now the security, obviously, everywhere is much tighter as the police are on, of course, heightened state of alert now that Trump is here. It's really anybody's guess how long he could be in court. We're thinking probably 1 hour to 2 hours. We know his indictment or his arraignment is about 2:15, we believe. It's about 1:25 p.m. here now. So it's looking like perhaps if everything is on schedule, let's see here, looking at my watch, maybe about 45 minutes for him. to have fingerprints taken, perhaps a mugshot. Again, we're not sure if he's going to have his mugshot taken, but that would happen within the next 45 minutes. And then he will be walked down a hallway within this judicial complex there behind me for his official arraignment. No protesters where I'm at for the most part. It's just people walking on the sidewalk. Some people don't even know exactly what's going on. Some do.
Right. Okay,
but
so
now everyone waits.
Gabriel, I know it's
to see what's next.
There's a lot of waiting, no doubt, to be done right now. So thanks for commenting and taking us through. We did see moments ago the former U.S. President Donald Trump emerge from that motorcade and enter the court. So we'll come back to you in a little bit, Gabriel, when things pick up a little bit. Let me go back now to Amy Koch. She's a Republican political strategist and joins us now from Minneapolis via Skype. And Amy, so sorry that I just asked you a question and then I had to take us away from your answer. So apologies for that. But now we can pick up on that point. And let me put the question once again to you, how you're seeing this. Is this a triumph and vindication of justice, or is this politicization of justice?
So I think that I feel like most Americans in that you have those, on the far left or that see it as a triumph. And I think you have those on the, far right or the Trump supporters that see this as a travesty. But most of us just have this like disquieting feeling of how did we get here? And to see this kind of moment play out and to see sort of the anger on both sides of the issue, and just wonder, how did the person elected to the highest position in our country wind up in a courtroom today with these kind of charges? It's disquieting. It's disturbing. It's hard.
It doesn't seem to be hurting his popularity, though, within Republican circles, right? The polls seem to suggest that his popularity is going up within Republican circles I'm talking about.
Right. That's I think what's the strangest and for me as a Republican, a disappointing thing, that when these charges are brought, or when he's indicted, it actually sort of, because of the strong base that he has, so many leaders in the Republican Party come forward and defend, and they do a knee-jerk, repetition of what the former president says about the situation, instead of as leaders stepping forward and taking up the reins and treating this in a more traditional way. And it just seems to me that something like this oddly strengthens the former president. I think that it helps him towards his nomination. I can't believe I'm saying that. But I also believe that Donald Trump will never be, even if he is my party's nominee, won't be the president again. He will not be reelected in this country. We have 3 election cycles since his 2016 election where Republicans have lost. And I think that will happen again if he is our nominee on the ballot. So it is, it's something that we've just really never experienced in my party or in this country before.
So I'm curious to know, because of course you are a Republican, do you feel like the Donald Trump phenomenon is increasingly hijacking the Republican Party away from its true direction and values? Because as you said, we do still see a lot of Republican leaders come out and defend Donald Trump and endorse him.
Right. And, I talked to many of those leaders behind the scenes, and they don't say the same thing. And so I would just really like... So
what is it, the fear of the base?
What happens when something like this happens, with the base, even with the base, but with leadership, with folks in leadership position, what they will say quietly is different than they will say publicly. And I just think it really gives legitimacy to his arguments when someone who is either elected
but my question,
to office,
why, Amy?
or in leadership,
when you speak to them behind the scenes, and I'm sure you ask them, okay, why are you telling me this differently in private than what you say in public? What is the answer? Is it that, well, we've got to stay on the same step as the base of Donald Trump?
That's correct. He's probably got, I don't know, maybe 20% of super strong supporters, and that is enough to move the needle when it comes to the Republican vote, or at least that's how they perceive it. I actually disagree. But that is the answer. That's the only one that I can come up with, and the only one that I can get anyone to say.
It's difficult to look in a crystal ball at this point, but this is going to be a long process in terms of the court proceedings, right? Maybe a year or more away
Correct.
before a trial is concluded and a ruling issued. What are your thoughts on the meantime of how that might impact the election race?
Right. Well, I think what it does is sort of quiets the possibility of anyone else stepping in. And you even saw with already declared Republican candidates like former Ambassador Nikki Haley, she has largely sided with Trump on this issue. And so in the past, traditionally, when something, would sort of blow up in the media or something bad like this would happen, the opponents would step in and use that opportunity. You're not seeing that. And so I think as this continues, and as you said, it could be months, it could be a year, which takes us fully and firmly past the caucuses, past the primaries, and into the general election. It could have sort of a quieting effect on any opposition to Donald Trump within the Republican Party.
What does it do nationally to the election race? Since you've got the crystal ball out, let me keep you going.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think that Republicans get shellacked, just as they have the last 3 election cycles, that Donald Trump has been an issue on the ballot. 2016, he definitely had coattails. He definitely helped Republicans. That's because he was new and people saw him as a businessman and a non-traditional who spoke his mind. But 2018, 2020, and 2022 all proved to be disasters for the Republican Party. And I would expect that will continue for 2024, much to my chagrin.
All right, and I had in the last hour a Republican member who was quite supportive of Donald Trump, and I put some questions to him, some critical questions, so you're going to have to bear with me now when I put the opposite to you. From the perspective of the base, when you listen to the base of Donald Trump, they have a very different narrative of what's happening in the Republican Party. They would say that some of those leaders, they would say, yeah, they're quite hypocritical. They don't represent the values that they believe in, and they believe are American values, that they're just looking for power. Why would anyone want a Republican Party that is led by such figures rather than Donald Trump, who, in their perspective, at least stands for what he really believes in?
Well, because when I talk to many of those supporters, they believe in Donald Trump. They're not reflective of the values that I grew up as a conservative, which was smaller government, strong defense, working with our allies across the world to bring peace. All the things that Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, and many more professed. I don't feel that. I feel like the allegiance is to Donald Trump, and this is America. That's not how we roll. But
Amy, they would say, are there those figures like the historical ones that you've referred to, whether it's Ronald Reagan and so on, who stand for a principle other than Donald Trump? Or is there really the deeper crisis within the Republican Party that, other than Donald Trump, it doesn't know really what it stands for other than seeking power for their own personal agendas?
I think that's when happens when you have such a strong personality that comes in, and it has become about Donald Trump. It's become you're with him or you're against him. And for folks like me that want to talk about the issues, that want to talk about the principles, to want to talk about what we stand for, which is frankly what Americans want to hear we're about, they just haven't had that. And so if it's, even though they might not agree with the left and all the things that they're doing, at least they're not the party of Donald Trump. And that's what this is coming down to. And I'm very disappointed to see that kind of boil down to whatever he says represents the Republican Party, because that's absolutely not how I was raised as a Republican.
All right. Thanks so much, Amy. It's been good talking to you. Thank you for sharing your perspective with us. Appreciate it.